Welcome back to Dream Harbor, Traveler. Tonight, I would like to tell you a story called The Glassmaker Who Tuned the Morning Bells. On a quiet workbench where pale ribbons of sunlight rested across clear glass, an instrument maker warmed a slender rod over a gentle flame. Beside them lay rows of delicate crystal chimes that shimmered like drops of frozen rain. Each one waited patiently for its own clear voice to awaken, and the little workshop seemed to breathe with them, full of calm light and careful hands. I am glad you have found your way here again. The harbor behind us is quiet tonight. The tide rises and falls with its familiar kindness, and the lanterns along the old dock sway so softly that they hardly seem to move at all. As always, travelers have arrived from long days and busy thoughts, and as always, there is a place waiting for each of you. Come with me for a little while. There is no hurry, only a peaceful workshop, warm with gentle fire, where beautiful sounds are made one careful breath at a time. The workshop stood at the edge of a broad glassmaking studio whose tall windows welcomed every sunrise. The building was old enough that each wooden beam had learned the language of quiet mornings. Every shelf held bowls of polished sand, tiny jars of powdered minerals, smooth wooden tools, and rows upon rows of clear vessels waiting to become something new. Nothing inside the studio was ever rushed. Even the clocks seemed to tick more softly there. Among all the makers who gathered during Makers Week, one craftsperson was known for creating instruments unlike any others. Their companions shaped bowls, bottles, windows, and ornaments, each with remarkable skill. But this gentle instrument maker believed that glass could hold not only light, but music. Not loud music, not music meant for crowded halls. Only the kind of sound that settled into quiet rooms, drifted through peaceful gardens, or floated across sleepy villages before the day fully began. Every morning, before anyone else arrived, the maker would unlock the studio doors while the air still carried the coolness of dawn. The floor welcomed familiar footsteps. The furnace glowed patiently. The kettles were filled. The windows slowly gathered pale gold along their edges. Before lighting the day's working flame, the maker always performed the same small ritual. One by one, they gently tapped each finished glass bell hanging from a long cedar beam overhead. The first answered with a bright, silvery note. The second replied lower and warmer. Another seemed almost to hum rather than ring. Together they formed a slow greeting to the morning. Never a song, simply a conversation between carefully shaped pieces of glass. Visitors often imagined that each bell carried a different color inside its sound. Some sounded pale blue, like clear skies. Others felt amber, as warm as evening lanterns. Some reminded people of mist above rivers. Others felt like fresh snow under moonlight. No one could quite explain why. No one needed to. During Makers Week, craftspeople from neighboring workshops visited one another to share patient knowledge rather than finished masterpieces. There were no competitions, no prizes, only open doors. Questions asked gently, answers offered kindly. Every workshop became both classroom and home. The instrument maker welcomed everyone with the same smile. "Come closer," they would say softly. "The glass is happier when it knows someone is listening." Children sometimes visited with parents who shaped stained windows. Woodworkers arrived carrying fragrant curls of cedar. Metalworkers came with polished tuning forks tucked into leather cases. Potters rested warm hands around cups of tea while watching molten glass stretch like glowing honey beneath careful breath. Everyone learned something. No one was expected to remember everything. The workshop itself seemed to teach. One afternoon, a companion craftsperson arrived carrying a small bundle wrapped in linen. Inside rested several slender wooden frames carved from pear wood that had been drying for many years. "I thought these might like to become part of your instruments," the companion said. The maker turned each frame slowly beneath the window light. The wood had quiet patience inside it, the sort that only time could place there. "It has been listening already," the maker replied. "Now we shall teach it to sing alongside glass." Together they began fitting delicate crystal tubes within the wooden frames. Each tube was measured patiently, each opening polished carefully. Sometimes they paused for several minutes before making the next adjustment, not because anything had gone wrong, simply because careful work often enjoyed silence. The companion noticed something curious. Whenever the maker listened for a note, they always closed their eyes. Never tightly, only enough to let their ears become a little larger than their sight. "Does it help?" the companion asked. The maker smiled. "When I stop watching the glass," they said, "the glass begins telling me what it wishes to become." The companion tried the same. Eyes closed. One gentle tap. A soft tone drifted upward through the room. It lingered just long enough to seem almost alive. "I hear it," whispered the companion. "So do I." Neither spoke for several moments afterward. There seemed little reason to. Outside the windows, the studio gardens welcomed bees drifting lazily among lavender blossoms. Warm breezes wandered through climbing vines. A fountain somewhere nearby offered quiet conversation with smooth stones. The sounds blended together so naturally that no one could tell where one ended and another began. As the days of Maker's Week unfolded, visitors returned again and again. Some wished to understand how glass became music. Others simply enjoyed sitting in the peaceful workshop. There were always extra stools, always warm tea, always enough quiet for anyone who needed it. The instrument maker believed every craft contained two lessons. The first could be explained. The second had to be experienced. So after demonstrating careful shaping, careful cooling, and careful tuning, they would often invite everyone to simply listen. Not to the instruments, to the room. People discovered tiny sounds they had never noticed before. The whisper of cooling glass, the crackle of wooden shelves settling, birdsong beyond open windows, tea gently poured into waiting cups, the sigh of bellows feeding steady flame, their own breathing. One visitor laughed softly. "I thought silence meant nothing was happening." The maker smiled again. "Silence," they answered, "is where gentle things introduce themselves." As evening approached each day, the furnace cooled little by little. Colors faded from bright orange into soft crimson, then into deep amber, finally into quiet darkness. The workshop never seemed empty afterward, only resting, just as fields rest beneath winter snow without truly becoming still. One evening, the companion remained after everyone else had gone. Together they polished several finished crystal bells until they reflected the first evening stars beyond the windows. The companion asked whether the maker ever grew tired of repeating the same careful work. The answer arrived slowly. "I repeat the motions," the maker said. "But no sunrise repeats itself." They lifted a finished bell. "This piece remembers today's light." Another bell. "And this one remembers yesterday's rain." A third. "This one listened while children laughed." Each carried something invisible, not trapped, simply remembered. The companion nodded thoughtfully. Perhaps every careful craft collected quiet moments along with its materials. As Maker's Week continued, a gentle tradition unfolded. Each morning before beginning work, everyone gathered beneath the cedar beam. The maker would invite a different visitor to ring the first bell. No instruction was needed beyond one sentence. "Lift with kindness." Some rang too softly, some slightly stronger. Each note sounded beautiful anyway, because kindness traveled farther than precision. Soon people began recognizing familiar voices among the bells. One note welcomed early risers. Another suited rainy mornings. One seemed happiest during bright afternoons. Another belonged to twilight. The collection slowly became less like a row of instruments, and more like old friends waiting patiently overhead. Near the center of the workshop stood a long table covered with unfinished pieces. Glass circles, curved tubes, tiny polished spheres, slender rods cooling beneath folded cloth. Visitors often assumed they were incomplete because something remained missing. The maker gently corrected them. "They are resting between decisions." Glass, they explained, enjoyed patience. It disliked being hurried toward becoming anything. Sometimes a shape revealed itself only after several quiet days. So unfinished work was never hidden away. It remained where sunlight could visit, where moonlight might offer different ideas, where dust settled lightly enough to remind everyone that even waiting had its own gentle beauty. The companion adopted this habit in their own workshop. Instead of rushing every project toward completion, they allowed some pieces to simply exist for a while. Unexpectedly, the work became calmer, more thoughtful, more joyful. Visitors noticed, not because the finished objects were grander, because they somehow felt peaceful. Word spread throughout Maker's Week that the instrument maker offered no secrets. Only attention, only care, only enough stillness for beautiful things to reveal themselves. That became lesson enough. On the final morning of the gathering, the studio welcomed its earliest sunrise yet. Golden light reached across every shelf before the furnace had even been lit. Tiny reflections danced across hanging bells. The room looked as though morning itself had chosen to become part of the workshop. The maker invited everyone to stand quietly. No speeches, no ceremony, only listening. One by one, each visitor rang a single bell. No melody had been planned, no pattern agreed upon. Yet somehow every note found space beside the next. Bright sounds, warm sounds, gentle echoes, small pauses. Nothing competed, nothing hurried ahead. The room filled with quiet harmony that seemed almost older than music itself. When the final note faded, no one wished to disturb the silence that followed. It rested among them like fresh snowfall. The companion finally whispered, "I think the room is smiling." "So do I," answered the maker. Later that day, everyone packed their tools with unhurried hands. Workshops exchanged small gifts. Not expensive things. A polished handle, a carved spoon, a folded cloth embroidered with tiny leaves, a little glass bell no larger than an acorn. The instrument maker gave the companion one clear chime hanging from braided linen thread. "It doesn't belong on a door," the maker explained. "It belongs wherever mornings begin." The companion carried it home carefully. Years afterward, each dawn still began with one soft note. Never loud, never demanding, simply enough to remind the day that kindness had awakened first. Seasons drifted quietly around the workshop. Warm afternoons, gentle rains, cool mornings, golden evenings. Sunlight shifted across the old wooden floor in countless patterns. The furnace continued breathing its steady warmth. Fresh glass waited patiently beside finished pieces. New visitors arrived. Others returned. Some children eventually became skilled makers themselves. They remembered the first lesson. Close your eyes. Listen. Allow the material to speak. The cedar beam grew older. Its bells grew more numerous. Yet each found room beside the others. There was always space for another gentle voice. As time wandered onward, fewer words were needed inside the workshop. People understood where the cups were kept, where the polishing cloths rested, where the quiet stools waited beside the windows. The place itself welcomed them. Sometimes the maker and companion worked through an entire afternoon speaking only once. Perhaps to admire the sunlight. Perhaps to offer tea. Perhaps to laugh softly when a curious bird landed on the windowsill. Silence never felt empty there. It felt wonderfully full. The crystal bells overhead answered passing breezes now and then. Only the lightest touch was enough. Their voices had become softer through years of listening. Or perhaps everyone else had learned to hear more gently. The workshop settled into familiar rhythms. Flame, breath, cooling glass, warm cups, patient hands, morning light, evening calm. Again and again, nothing needed changing. Nothing wished to hurry elsewhere. Even the dust drifting through sunlight seemed perfectly content with its slow journey. If you had visited then, traveler, you might have found yourself sitting quietly beside the open window without quite knowing how long you had remained there. You might have watched clear glass catch pale afternoon light until it resembled still water. You might have listened to one gentle bell, and then another, allowing each note to fade completely before expecting the next. Soon you would notice your own breathing matching the easy rhythm of the room, the warmth of the furnace, the coolness near the window, the scent of cedar wood, fresh tea, clean glass, everything simple, everything enough. Eventually, evening would soften the colors. The workshop would grow quieter still. The maker would place one final finished bell upon its waiting hook. The companion would fold the cloths. The last cup would be rinsed. The furnace would rest. Outside, the first stars would appear one by one, never hurrying across the sky. Inside, every crystal bell would hold a little memory of another peaceful day. Nothing more was required. Nothing had been left undone. And as that gentle workshop slowly becomes part of the quiet place where dreams are kept, we find ourselves once more walking the familiar docks of Dream Harbor. The tide is still moving with its patient rhythm. The harbor lights are still glowing across calm water. Travelers continue arriving from distant days, carrying heavy thoughts that grow lighter with every peaceful story. Perhaps, by morning, you will not remember every bell, every window, or every careful hand that shaped glass into gentle music. That is perfectly all right. Dream Harbor remembers. It always does. And I will be here again, with another quiet story waiting beside another calm evening tide. Until then, rest gently, sleep peacefully. Good night, traveler.